I'm Paul Dietrich. I'm the Chief Investment Strategist for B. Riley Wealth Management. And well, it's been one heck of a year. You know, as an investor, there is nothing like trying to navigate both a health and economic crisis that is unique in modern American history, plus the most important election of our lifetimes. You know, if you think about it, we'll all be glad when 2020 is over. This year, we have gone through COVID-19 at the beginning of the year. We've gone through the lockdown, the stock market crash in March, the stock market recovery in April, and now the elections. I mean, are you all having some fun yet? You know, like everyone else, I've been sifting through the polls. I've been sifting through all the news, and I've been trying to make some sense out of what the American people were trying to say in this election. You know, it seems so clear that there are two Americas, and boy, are we fundamentally divided. But this election has given me some hope. If you look at the returns carefully and the exit polls in those battleground states, which by definition are the most divided states politically because the results are so close, that's why they're battleground states, you'll see that there are still a few moderates left in America. In many of these battleground states, you saw a significant, if small, percentage of voters vote for Joe Biden for president and the Republican for the Senate or the House. I mean, nobody saw that we were going to gain seats in the House. And that's why the Senate will most likely remain Republican, but with just a 1 or 2 seat majority. And we won't even know that until January because of the runoffs election in Georgia in January. So I think the message the American people was trying to send to Joe Biden was, you know, although we liked some of Trump's policies on taxes and regulatory reform and his judicial nominees, you know, most of us, if we are really, really honest with ourselves, we were fed up and embarrassed by the lies and the lewd, crude behavior of the president. And so I think they were saying to Mr. Biden, you, Mr. Biden, seem to be a decent guy and more how we like to see ourselves as a nation, as Americans in the world. And we're exhausted. And we have been embarrassed how the rest of the world now views us. But we really don't want to become a socialist nation. We've done very well with capitalism, free markets, and free trade, and we don't want to change that. We believe in a competent and effective federal government, but a limited government that doesn't go too far. We also really don't want you to raise our taxes. We don't want to kneecap this economic recovery and destroy jobs, you know, at this, when the COVID virus is still pandemic in this country. And we don't want to do it just to fund some Pollyannish progressive plan like the Green New Deal. We also don't want socialized medicine. Please come up with a free market solution to provide health care to the uninsured and that can pass the Supreme Court and that's constitutional. You know, that surely can be done. So what we are saying is, we like you, but we're going to keep you on a very short leash, and Mitch McConnell is going to be your dog walker. it seems clear from the stock market over the past few days that everyone, at least on Wall Street, loves divided government. You know, nothing too radical can happen so long as Mitch McConnell is still in charge of the US Senate. Let me tell you what most analysts expect in the first 2 years of a Biden administration with a Republican Senate. First off, you know, tell your clients no new taxes. There's not going to be any tax increase of any kind so long as the Senate remains Republican. There's going to be no Medicare for all. They're going to have to do a little work and come up with a free market solution to cover all the uninsured in America with still maintaining pre-existing, that you're not precluded because of pre-existing conditions. There is going to be no court packing whatsoever that would have to go through Congress. And there is no Green New Deal. And there's probably nothing that can go through that would destroy the energy industry. So that's where we are. If you actually talk to and listen to and read the press statements made by Biden's own official transition staff, he has said that the new administration is going to be solely focused on 3 goals in the first year, and that they don't really want to use up any political capital on distractions. And when you talk to some of the people, as I have on the transition staff, that means, you know, kind of progressive, kind of Pollyannish policies that the far left wants. He wanted to dampen that down to let them know that he is going to be myopically focused on 3 goals for the first year. One is to create a national plan, not a 50-state plan, but a national plan to fight the coronavirus pandemic and drive down new infections, so we don't have to go through these stupid lockdowns that are being created because there really is no national plan. The second is to create a national plan to distribute the first approved, safe, and effective vaccines so that they can be widely available to everyone through their local Walgreens or CVS, and to encourage at least 60% of the nation to get vaccinated. We need 60% of people in the United States to be vaccinated to get herd immunity that doesn't come from killing lots of people or infecting lots of people, but they actually create herd immunity because of the antibodies in the vaccine. And the last and kind of most important for our industry is to get quickly distributed a stimulus package to small businesses and others who have been severely impacted through no fault of their own because of this vaccine. Obviously, the Democrats want to pass a $2 to $2.5 trillion stimulus package that would include money for additional money for the people who are unemployed. And you have to remember that we lost 22 million jobs in March in the lockdowns, and we've really only recovered about a little over 11 million since that time. So there's another 11 to 12 million who are still unemployed, who were employed in February. And so a lot of those people are in the restaurant industry and bars and hospitality and small retail institutions. And so It will help them. It will be another round of PPP, which helps small businesses. The National Federation of Independent Businesses just recently said that if they don't get some help in stimulus, 41% of small businesses in America could be out of business or bankrupt within the next 6 months. And they've made that very clear, as has the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, but both Republican organizations, to both Mitch McConnell and to Joe Biden, that, but especially to the Republicans, that they've got to focus on saving Main Street businesses. Wall Street's doing quite well, but there really is a gap between Main Street and Wall Street, and that's where most people are employed, is on Main Street. And they're, at least the major business trade associations in the United States, realize that something has to be done until we get a safe and effective vaccine and we can get back to normal. This is not something that will go on forever. It's simply something that we have to do in the short run, like we would for any natural disaster, which is what this virus is. About 6 weeks ago, I wrote in one of my market commentaries that's published every week by AdvisorHub, I wrote that Goldman Sachs had predicted that the market would go up by about 3% if Biden won. And I know that probably took a lot of people's breath away at the time. This was a few months ago, but turns out they were right. I expect the market to do well between now and the end of the year. I mean, this morning in the Washington Post and the New York Times, there was an article that Mitch McConnell at his press conference last night said that he is now open to a stimulus package. And surprisingly, he also stated that he was open to helping local state governments. That was the sticking point in previous negotiations. But I think it's become clear as Republicans have gone home that state and local governments, it's not because of mismanagement one way or another. It's just because of the lockdowns. They didn't get any tax revenue. They didn't get any sales tax revenue, and they are really hurting. And it was made clear to most Republicans that you're going to be in real trouble when we start firing the police and the firemen and the EMT workers simply because you weren't willing to provide any stimulus to get us through this period until there's a safe and effective vaccine. And that's the other thing, as I mentioned before, because of the testing that these vaccines go through, we kind of know when they should be finished with the test, and it is expected that we will have some announcement for a safe and effective vaccine later this month. Biden is also expected to announce a major infrastructure $2-3 trillion project shortly after he's formally named a president-elect. All of these things could really lift the stock market between now and the end of the year. With a $2-3 trillion infrastructure project, that would create, according to a lot of the analyst projections, 7 to 10 million, which would really take up a lot of those jobs that were lost and have remained lost because of the pandemic. And also that's money that is not going to some sheikhs in Afghanistan or Iraq or Syria and into their Swiss bank accounts. This is money that's going to American workers. They're going to be paying state and local taxes, federal taxes. They're going to be spending that money at Walmart and Costco and buying iPhones at Christmas. It becomes a virtuous cycle and should really, have a major impact on GDP growth with this kind of spending. And I've always thought that this should not be considered deficit spending. This should be like capital expenditures on corporate balance sheets. We like capital expenditures. We don't like deficit spending. And, let's face it, we're still driving on the same roads and going over the same bridges that were built in the last infrastructure project back in the 1950s during the Eisenhower administration. And so this is going to be really important. I think one other thing I wanted to say about the Senate is that Mitch McConnell will only have a 1 or 2 vote, depending on the elections in January, a 1 or 2 vote majority in the Senate. And that gives equal importance to 4 Republican senators: Collins of Maine, Sass of Nebraska, Murkowski of Alaska, and Mitt Romney of Utah. If any one of these people decide to vote for a Democratic proposal in the Senate that can be done with a 50-50 vote, and we all know the filibuster rule in the Senate, but lots of votes go through on a 50-50 basis that are designed to be able to go through on a 50-50 basis. You only need one of those Republicans for Kamala Harris to come in and break the tie in the Senate. So I think Mitch is going to have to he's going to have to negotiate more than he had to do during the Trump administration. And I thought it was good that he, in his talks yesterday, he said stimulus was first on the agenda and that he was willing to look at some of the things that they had rejected before. It's going to be an interesting dynamic watching the Senate. So the question that I know all of you are asking is, how are we going to pay for all of these trillions of dollars of stimulus and infrastructure spending? And it's been interesting. It hasn't been much of a question for Republicans or Democrats over the last 4 years. Republicans in the US Senate and the House, they have run up trillion-dollar deficits every year for the last 4 years, even before the $3 trillion stimulus package that they voted on in March or April. So the Congress under the Trump administration, they were spending, Democrats and Republicans alike, like drunken sailors. And I want to make clear, I mean no disrespect to drunken sailors. But the reason Joe Biden doesn't really have to raise taxes and he's able to pay for all this is that the Republicans have shown the Democrats they can just ask the Fed to print money by selling 30-year Treasury bonds at almost no interest cost to the US government and suffer no political consequences. So why upset your constituents by raising their taxes when you can pay for all your projects by, issuing 30-year Treasury bonds? The Federal Reserve is paying for all of this by issuing these 30-year Treasury bonds that pay less than 2%, which barely covers inflation. And because of negative interest rates in Germany, France, and Japan, where they have to pay the banks to hold their money, those big companies and institutions and pension funds they're snapping up our 30-year bonds. So most economists say we have 30 years to figure out how to repay all this borrowing. And so who's going to pay for it? Well, I feel sorry for most millennials because the joke's on them. No one has told them yet that they get to pay the entire bill for all of it's in 30 years time. No wonder all the millennials you see on TV are out drinking and partying in large groups and then spreading the virus to older people like us baby boomers. It really is the revenge of the millennials. We get to run up the deficits and someone else gets to pay for it all. I mean, think about it. Is America great or what? For those of us who are baby boomers, the good news is we will all be dead by the time this 30-year debt has to be paid off. And that's the good news. Thank you all for coming.